Here. Welcome to another Around the Lens interview. I'm here with the filmmaker Efosa Osaghae, who's going to be talking to us about his film, Phantom Carousel. Efosa, thanks for joining the program. Tell us, what is this film all about?
Yes, thank you, David. Phantom Carousel is about a guy who's down on his luck, a broke gig worker who has fallen into a very shady line of work, which is spying on the remote workforce of London. So his days involve him driving around London, spying on freelancers, people who work from home, in parks, in gyms, in cafes. And essentially the film is a day in that life of his line of work. And we follow, his escapades, really, with 2 or 3 characters that he's spying on. And it's kind of thematically really about the performance of work and how we work and why we do it, and a meditation on different work processes and, you know, how people can have very different ways of doing work, even though the result is very similar or the same. And looking at how certain, companies and employers, have become more fixated on everything around how the work is made rather than the work itself. And we've kind of blown that up to an absurd degree. Obviously, post-pandemic, with a load of people still working from home. Yeah, so it was really just based on my anxieties. Being someone who predominantly works from home, I produce commercials day to day, but most of the time I'm not required to be on set other than the actual shoot day. So I just imagined what would happen if people were to see how I work, how I prepare for jobs. And I always thought if anyone were to see how I do it, I probably would never get hired again if it was a requirement to do it in a specific way. Yeah, so that's essentially in a nutshell what the film is and what it's about.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, I mean, obviously this job of watching other people work is interesting, and I was wondering if the idea was based on some sort of reality, is there instances of this happening where they sent out people to monitor people working from home? Is this based in reality, or is this simply based on, again, your idea of the anxieties of people watching how you work?
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, I wrote the script, the first draft for the script would have been 2023 maybe. And at that point, it was just a high concept idea. After I made the film, and I just started to do more research after I made the film, in the edit, it's actually a job that exists. So the main character, who is essentially a private investigator for companies, this job in the UK, I don't know about the US,
sure,
and I don't know about a lot of other countries, but in the UK, and I think in France specifically, you as a company, you can hire essentially a corporate spy / private investigator for about £500 a day to spy on your employees. Okay. But it has to be, there's only specific reasons why you can legally do this. And I think one of them is for sick leave. If an employee said they're sick and you have doubts about whether they actually are, you can actually send someone to, spy on them.
Yeah.
And then employee absenteeism. So if they've said I need a day off for whatever reason, you can also send someone for that. But the critical thing is you can't have them breach homes. They can't, really go too close, physically on location. So it has to be at a distance. But that is fully legal, which is the crazy thing. So a lot of what you see in the film,
sure, of course,
technically,
anything that we viewed in public,
it probably exists. Yeah,
absolutely. And in terms of the United States, and the only time, I don't know this exhaustively, but from my own knowledge, is if someone is claiming workman's comp, similar to sick leave, right? And they're saying oh, they can't move or they can't walk around or something like that. The stories I've seen have shown them, up and about and doing normal daily activities, when in reality, according to their workman's comp, no, they shouldn't be doing that. And so that's when I've seen instances where private investigators and surveillance cameras and stuff like that usually get involved. But as you said, they're not going into people's homes and looking at their internet search history. They're just observing them from the outside. So talk to me a little about kind of the process of getting this film made. You had the idea, you wrote the script, then how did you kind of get the funding, and what were the process of, hiring your cast and crew? Was that overall easy or difficult? And then, talk to me about the filming itself. How long did you film for? Was it overall a pretty smooth process? Did you have any issues during filming? I'm really curious about those things.
Yeah, it's so in terms of finding funding, I just self-funded the entire thing because I knew,
Self-funded,
like in
okay.
the UK, we have a lot of governmental help with outlets like the BFI and other funding schemes, but they're heavily competitive and they take a lot of
Yeah,
time.
sure.
And I had a gap
Yep.
in between productions as a producer, and I said, okay, if I'm going to make this film, it needs to be now. So I said, okay, let me just self-fund this. And then again, because I've been producing, it wasn't hard finding, crew, cast. So that was quite quick. Because I already had these people like as people that I've worked with, a lot of them. The casting process, I'm a big fan of casting people that I don't necessarily have to know them beforehand, but I'm more of a person that casts based on how the person is, their vibe as a real person, especially for this film because it was heavily based on just real people. So most of the cast I knew beforehand. So Roxanne and Alec, who played India and Benta respectively, I knew them. And then Olara, played by Babirie, they were someone that Alec knew. So it was kind of just like a situation where I knew most of the cast, either myself or through someone else. The difficult thing with filming was that I think it's such an ambitious short, and we only had about 2.5 days to film it. So we had to move very, very quickly. And my shot list was so regimented and precise because I literally had this app called Shot Lister, which is basically just saved the day because I was literally on my phone on set with my DOP, Jed, and I was literally just ticking off shots. And that's why with the actors, we did
Hmm.
rehearsals and I spoke to them at length, just about for them to understand the world of the film. Because when it came to filming, I knew that we just wouldn't have much time. We had to just go, go, go. So that on set, I was literally just going through the shots and just like ticking off, ticking off, ticking off. And that was the only way I felt like we could make this film possible in the time that we had. Because when I was sending the rough cut to people, they just assumed that I had like 5 days. And to be honest, if I was producing it for someone
Hmm.
else, I'd probably say, yeah, you need about 5 days because, we're filming cars.
Hmm.
We had multiple locations. It's a decent sized cast. For a short film, and we move around a lot. So I knew we
Yeah.
had to be super, super quick. And I think going in knowing that it meant that I could only be super efficient because we shot really for the edit. I knew that, we couldn't do
Yeah.
tons of takes, we couldn't do loads of coverage. I needed to get what I needed to edit the film at the bare minimum, and that's
Hmm.
kind of that. So it was kind of risky because if we didn't have it on set, that was it. Game game over.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea there with the Shot Lister app. I've not used or heard of that before, but I mean, obviously I've used for myself a number of different methods to keep track of what I'm shooting and did I get the shot. And a lot of times that just boils down to essentially scratching off lines on the script. Be like, okay, I got him saying that line. I got him saying that line. Okay. But, obviously the better and more organized method would be to use something like that. And I've seen a number of different tools from different companies that have their own particular way to organize that. But you found that was a very effective means by which to get what you needed to get and ensure you had it.
It was essential. It was absolutely essential because also this is the first time that I've really directed narrative. I've directed music videos,
Okay.
some commercials, and a couple other short films, but they were more music led and abstract. So
Yeah.
this was the first time that I really had to deal with continuity, and it's nearly 20 minutes
Mm.
long. And because
Yep.
a lot of the film is basically near enough in real time, I needed the continuity like to be very, very strict. So yeah, without Shot Lister, it would have been impossible. Like there was too many things that could have gone wrong continuity wise. So Yeah, if I
Yeah,
didn't have a super
absolutely.
strict shot list, yeah, it would not have been possible.
And what'd y'all shoot on?
We shot on an Alexa 35. Yeah, I can't remember the exact lenses, but yeah, Alexa 35 for I think for pretty much all of the shots, really. Yeah, we didn't use any other cameras, I don't think. Yeah, Alexa 35.
Okay, great. And, were there any sort of, I would say, unexpected occurrences that happened while you were shooting? Obviously you shot out in parks, you shot out, in public spaces. Did you need specific, I would say, permits or whatnot, or did you just kind of do it sort of free form, so to speak? Just get in there and get out and get what you needed.
Yeah, I mean, we had permits just because we had like a cast and crew of like 25, and I think at that amount of
Oh
people,
wow,
I didn't want to risk it. Yeah, I mean, nothing, like amazingly, nothing really went wrong.
that's good.
I think other than when we were filming the house scenes on that street, so we shot on a bank holiday in the UK, which is basically an extended it's like weekend into and then the Monday was like a day off for people at work. So typically bank holidays are like good for filming, but not for everyone, not for anyone else, because we kind of just took over that street a little bit. And yeah, there was a bit of tension between our crew and some of the neighbors on that street. But I
Hmm.
think we were able to kind of sweet talk a few of the neighbors, and there was a few people that were just popping their heads out of windows, just curious as to what we were filming. But
Right,
yeah, I mean, apart from
of
that, that
course.
was that was probably the only real tension because we were filming on that street and we had like there's one scene that really you needed to see the whole street. So it was just a case of yeah, sweet talking neighbors and just calming them down. But yeah, apart from that, it was like thankfully quite an easy shoot.
Yeah, absolutely. Remind me again, how many days did you shoot?
2.5. Yeah, so the two main days were the house days, and then the half day was for the park and the driving.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're doing anything where you're moving companies, the company move type thing, yeah, that's always going to add time to the overall production. So you've got quite a catalog here of work you've done in the past. Talk to me about, where you kind of came up as a filmmaker and what kind of drove you to the filmmaking craft.
Yeah, I mean, ever since I was maybe 8 or 9, I've just wanted to make films, really. It was, I think, in 2008 when I watched The Dark Knight that I said, okay, in the cinema, I was like,
I'm
this
sorry,
needs to be
Efosa,
something that
if
I
you were,
just, I just do.
I might be a connection issue between us, but can you start that answer over again? Because you're kind of coming in and out.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah. If you could just start that answer over, I would really appreciate it because we missed
Yep.
a portion of that.
Yep. Yeah, so from 8 or 9 years old, I've pretty much made the decision to get into film. I think when I was younger, I was super into like fantasy and sci-fi and superheroes. And I think as I got, do you know, funny enough, when I was younger, I just thought that at some point all the supernatural things I was watching on TV and film would it become reality. Like I thought, yeah, at some point like this is real. Like I will develop superpowers or I will enter this kind of realm. I just thought that was going to happen. And then I think as I got into like 10, 11 years old and it became obvious that this was not real life, I thought, okay, well, how can I make my own worlds? And that's where film really like took hold of me. And then so I studied film at university, film studies, not film production. And then yeah, I just started making my own things. I started directing music videos, like fashion films, a lot of fashion films. This is maybe 13 years ago. And then, yeah, and then in 2018, I got this opportunity to produce a sci-fi film that was starring a Game of Thrones actor, Eugene Simon. And then, yeah, I mean, that producing that film is a story for another time. But the short version of that was that it was super, super indie, self-funded by the director, so I was just producing it. And yeah, I managed to get a distribution deal, theatrical in America, during COVID, actually, in 2021. So I flew out there to see the film play in cinemas, and it was surreal because this was during COVID when there was hardly any films in cinemas. And then I'll never forget, I was at this cinema in Brooklyn. And on the listing outside the cinema, it literally said Matrix 4, I think it was Spider-Man No Way Home, and then I think it was Sing 2. So all these three big films. And then there was our little like scrappy next to no budget indie film on the same listing. And I just thought this is just like bizarre. Like how am I even here? And then from that, then I started to get a lot of people wanting me to produce like bigger films. So then 2 years ago, I jumped on board this Julia Fox film just to help with just helping bring some money to it, like some financing. So I helped out with that. And then yeah, and then day to day I'm producing commercials and I'm still like directing like short films, music videos here and there. But for me now with Phantom Carousel, it's really to just go like full in on directing more things, feature films, bigger commercials, bigger music videos. That's the entire game plan.
Nice, man. Awesome. Well, great for you. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we say goodbye to you?
Yeah, I mean, nothing more than it. Look, guys, if you're in LA this Friday, 14th, 5 p.m., Phantom Carousel is playing at the TCL Chinese theaters. So if you're in LA and you have the evening free, or even if you don't have the evening free, just come. Just come to the screening. It's in the dark comedy
Cancel
block.
what you already have planned and come to the screening.
Cancel. Exactly. Prioritize my screening. Yeah, we'd love to have you there. It's going to be a great showpiece with we have I think 5 or 6 other films playing with it. So if you love dark comedy as well, come down. And yeah, if you want to follow more updates on the film and the work that I'm doing, my handle is at ef.osa. And yeah, please, stay tuned for more updates. And yeah, like I said, if you're in LA, please come down Friday 14th. And yeah, would love to have you.
That's awesome. That's great. And I hope a bunch of people come out there, and it's a great premiere. Actually, I did have one final question to ask about how the film, during the playing of the film, you showed the name of the film multiple times, and I believe there's like a trademark associated with it. What's all that about?
You're the first person who's asked this question. So that was kind of because a lot of the film is kind of like meta. There's a lot of Easter eggs in the film, especially with the URLs and some of the Google searches. So that was because the film is kind of making a joke on like the corporate. So the trademark, the Phantom Carousel is not actually trademark. I should probably trademark it, but that was just kind of like an in joke. And then the repetition of it coming up was that because the film is a loop, and basically every single target is essentially an episode of itself. So every time the title comes up, we've basically started again. So if you look, it comes up 3 times, and it's before each next target. So it's essentially like we're going through this again and again and again. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, great. Well, again, thank you, Efosa, so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Good luck on the premiere, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again when you have your next project.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you for having me on, and all the interesting questions, and great to be on.
Awesome. All right, have a great one.